Welcome to the July the 3rd, 2001 pre-taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city of Grand Prairie and some of the people that have made history and some that are making history even today. This is our history tape number 428. And we are so excited today. We have with us the illustrious David Barbosa, Superintendent of Schools. Dr. Barbosa, welcome to the set, young man.
My pleasure to be here, Ruthie.
Wonderful. And Mr. Sam Buckmeyer, PR, media, honcho person of the Grand Prairie ISD. Welcome to the set.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Now, it is so exciting to have you all here because we're hoping to set the stage and put you two gentlemen on the spot about something very exciting that is coming down the pike for the citizens of Grand Prairie, and especially those that are interested in the history of the schools, whether it be the Common School District number 44 of Grand Prairie or the Independent School District of Grand Prairie that had its birthday, I believe, in about 1902 on a magic date following a referendum by the citizens of Grand Prairie, and they were very excited about this. At least half of them were, and I believe we got a majority vote to become a Grand Prairie Independent School District. Now, that was on, I believe, July the 2nd. And here we are on July the 3rd. We couldn't tape this show on July the 2nd because we're not in business on that day. So we're one day late in giving you a year's advance notice, 1 year and 1 day, or 1 year less 1 day, that we would like to talk with you two gentlemen about your perception of Grand Prairie and how important the history of Grand Prairie is to some of the people that are living today and some of the people that will be born in Grand Prairie that will just be so delighted to know that this could happen. Now, I do have a few little documents that were obscure until about 1981, and they were located in the Dallas County Schools archives. And having been a member of that board for a reasonable amount of time, I was allowed to go in and make copies of all of this. And of course, these are public records, and anyone could go in and make copies of this, but no one in Grand Prairie, I guess, had ever done this. So you were provided with a set of all of these wonderful documents at one time to a very famous administrator of the Grand Prairie ISD. And I would like to talk with you all about the possibility of, let's see if we can find those records so that I won't have to give you my originals one more time. And Dr. Barbosa, you're just so precious to come here and help us set the stage for 2002 on July the 2nd, when you all will celebrate the 100th birthday of the schools of Grand Prairie, Texas. How do you feel about this, Dr. Barbosa?
Let me first thank you for having us on your show, and indeed we're excited about the fact that next year we will complete our 100th birthday. You know, when I was growing up and people used to talk about 100 years, that just seemed like an eternity.
Yes.
So it's hard to believe that the school district has existed in one form or another now, will exist for 100 years next year. So we're excited about that, and we're looking forward to planning some activities, some events, and indeed, as you said, try to create a greater awareness in the community about the history of the school district.
Now, at one time we had, back in about 1981, we just got all moved to do a historical research of the schools because we were into the city of Grand Prairie, Texas history. And when we had accomplished this, we wrote this magnificent letter on stationery. We had just become an All-America city in 1975 or 76, just before this, and this was real impressive stationery, and I signed it as the chairman of something, and Mr. Hobbs Williams signed it as the superintendent of schools. This went out to all of the schools in Grand Prairie at that time, and asking them to do some research and help us start a history. Can you imagine how many letters we received back, or how much history was sent back to poor old Ruthie Jackson about that time?
I have absolutely no idea.
0. We do not want this to happen in 2001 and 2002. Do you think that the principals and the school district and the school board and everyone will sort of be interested in helping us to establish and maybe go back to the nuts and bolts and do a history of every school, even though some of the ones have only been here a year or 2 years or what? What do you think about that, Superintendent?
I think it's very doable, and you and I have had some preliminary conversations, and I think we can visit with our administrative team, including the principals, and charge them with that responsibility. And it seems to me that they can enlist their PTAs and other members of their school communities to begin to gather that information. I think it's possible, and then bring it all together and put it into a history of the school district.
We have no idea how many people in Grand Prairie, Texas that are longtime residents, how many of them have things in their closet, in old file cabinets, in boxes out in the garage, and old yearbooks of PTAs that will show who the teachers were and all of this. I saw something today that I thought was real interesting. Now, we have a Grand Prairie Historical Organization. We have a Grand Prairie Historical Commission that's appointed by the city. You all don't even have a commission appointed by the school board to take care of things like this. So I think, Mr. Sam, do you think we could talk you and the school board and everything and starting your own little historical commission just for the schools?
I actually think that would be very, very valuable. And I don't think it would be a hard thing to do. You wouldn't have to twist many arms.
That's right, and that way you could have a lot of people pulling all of this stuff together, and I know the superintendent would kind of pat you on the back. He probably wouldn't give you a raise, but he'll probably do something. But the
Well, we'd have to talk to the school board about the raise.
Yes, we'll work on that. But we hope to interview someone from the school board one of these days, and maybe we can get a commitment from them. What do you think?
Absolutely.
All right. I told you we have a historical organization, a historical commission, and we also have a Grand Prairie Genealogical Society. And guess what they're doing? They're going back to the library, and they're from the microfilm that are in the library. We have microfilm starting in 1909. We do not have microfilm for 1902 and back. And we're sorry we don't have that, but they just did not do that for us then. Someone did not have the forethought. But they're in their newsletter, they're taking excerpts from these microfilm and they're printing them in the newsletter. And this is one of the things that I found in my last newsletter that I received. It said, Grand Prairie Texan, Friday, May the 21st, 1909. New principal elected. A newly elected school board met Monday night and elected J.A. Whitner, or it could be Whitener, W-H-I-T-E-N-E-R, principal of the Grand Prairie School, so they just had one apparently, for the coming scholastic year. Professor Whitener is the present superintendent of the Garland High School and served the Arlington schools in the same capacity for 2 years previous to entering the service of the Garland schools. And it says on here, it's going to be continued. They continue the excerpts from this 1909 microfilm. Do you think that the schools even would be interested in finding more about that by having maybe teachers assign this to the boys and girls and use the things that the city of Grand Prairie has provided? We just had new microfilm films made about 4 years ago, and they have a machine that will put these all, and then you can copy these down or make copies of, but it costs money to do all of these things. So tell me how some of this stuff grabs you as far as the preview or the preface of the celebration.
Well, I think, as you've already indicated, the actual date for the creation of the school district was in, what, July 3rd, I believe you said?
July 2nd.
July 2nd, excuse me, of 1902. So it seems to me that we can get
July the 5th.
July the 5th.
1902.
Okay. Well, it seems to me that
Straighten it up.
we can get the right dates, right?
Let's get the right date.
We can use that as a basis for working with our teachers as we look at the curriculum and integrate, perhaps they're doing some research, because that's part of some of the skills that they need to develop, and writing some reports or writing some essays that revolve around the history of the school district. I think that's very doable.
Now, Judy Wilkinson has been invaluable to us, but she has been an officer in the Grand Prairie Historical Organization. She had to resign her position. She's going to be an advisor to us because of the heavy load that she has at the Grand Prairie ISD. And she took a videotape that I sent to her just to preview of a quilting project that some boys and girls had done in California. She gave it to all of her secondary school people in the social studies, and of all of them, one teacher at Lee Middle School answered the call and got her class to each one design a quilt block about the history, but they did it about the history of Texas. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get some of the teachers to do something like that and do the history of the schools? And we could have right in the middle of this our superintendent of schools and his picture in the middle of the quilt and all of these other things that led up to that. Can't you get excited about something like that, Dr. Barbosa?
I think it's an excellent idea. I don't like the idea of the superintendent in the middle.
I need the superintendent.
That may tend to scare some people off from the quilt, but I like the idea because each of the students can concentrate on one event or one activity, make their block, and then we just bring it all together. And maybe even involve more than just students from one school, maybe bring those blocks from all schools and put a large quilt together.
Now, I'd like to ask Mr. Sam one question. Mr. Sam, we know the beginning of the Independent School District of Grand Prairie on this July the 5th, 1902. But before that, there were schools here in Grand Prairie.
That is correct.
We're not going to do any research on that, or are you going to go back as well as do this 100-year celebration? What do you think?
I almost think that you need to, because I don't think you can talk about the history of Grand Prairie schools without showing what was there beforehand. A few years ago, we did celebrate the 100th anniversary of Florence Hill Elementary.
Remember
Florence Hill is one of those schools that predates the incorporation of the school district.
That's right.
But there were even schools before, say, 1861
Yes.
there weren't schools in this area, so students had to travel to another nearby community before we could actually build a one-room school here in Grand Prairie. So there is a history of education in Grand Prairie that predates the district. So again, I say, I don't think you can talk about the history without some mention of those schools as well.
All right. Do you know anything about Mr. Marvin Vale, who was a principal of the Grand Prairie ISD that wrote this magnificent history? Tell me about that, Mr.
Yes,
Sam.
ma'am. Mr. Vale's book is one of those that we've leaned on many times.
Yes.
His book was published in 1953-54, and very thorough work.
Yes.
He touched on not only the history of the city, the community itself, but also the school district, leaned very heavily on excerpts from the Grand Prairie Texan. So some very accurate information that, like I said, we have leaned on many times as an authoritative document.
Superintendent, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the older of the documents that I have, and it is 1874 through 1877, where Grand Prairie was a common school district, I believe number 44.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know whether or not, Mr. Buckmeyer, that we have a number as an independent school district? Are we District 72, or is there a number, or do we need to research that?
You talk currently?
Yes. Do we have a number?
We have a number that is assigned to us by TEA, if I'm not mistaken.
We do.
Yes. All right, we need to find that out and make it public. We need to know. Y'all are such a great help to me. But
What that number is, we don't know, but there is a number.
well,
But we can let you know very quickly.
that's great. I think this is getting out of hand, isn't it? Well, Anyhow, we do know that we were a common school district, number 44.
1874.
The older of the records that I have is 1877. I know there must be something earlier than that. According to Mr. Marvin Vale, there were other school records other than the ones that I happen to have a copy of. But I think that under these circumstances, I do have one other thing that you said that we ought to talk about, and that's some of the things that have made this interview very exciting for me. The main thing is that I have a created interest between the two of you, the head man and the head media man. And between you two and our being able to use you as ambassadors for Grand Prairie schools, to talk with the school board. See, you set the stage for the things that the school board will take into consideration. You have at your fingertips such a magnificent organization that comes through for boys and girls. We want you to really kind of pledge that you'll do this for the boys and girls that'll be in years to come that may want to go to the library and say, well, here's the microfilm from 2001 when Grand Prairie said that they were going to do some research, and look in the library here. We have these CDs and all of this wonderful information because they cared enough to stop the music, at least temporarily, while we're building schools and while you're building parking lots and you're hiring new teachers and you're getting things ready for school to begin in the middle of August. We know that this is going to be a short year. It seems short when you have a vision and a masterpiece that y'all are going to have to paint or build. And Mr. Sam, do you have any wonderful things that you could just bring to mind, that some of the things that you would suggest or pass on to us in the community where we can help, where you can look out into the camera and say, come on down, we need all the help we can get, or what?
Well, I think there are numerous opportunities, and you've mentioned some yourself. Involving the students in the schools is going to be paramount to what we do. But Grand Prairie has such a rich history, and if you look at Mr. Vale's document, the names that you continually come across are the same family names that are still here in Grand Prairie. So there's so many resources, not only for us as administrators and school board members, but also for these children to use. For personal interviews. You talked about the technology with the microfiche. The internet can be used as a resource. So there are all of these activities, these teachable opportunities that we can work into what we're already doing. Ms. Wilkinson makes a point of working in Grand Prairie history to her overall social studies program, and I think that gives kids a taste of where they came from here in Grand Prairie.
You also have one of the most magnificent new media centers at South Grand Prairie High that is bordering on digital and all of these things because they got a grant. How wonderful of you all to do that, because you have the capability there of not only doing the written research, but to document things that have never been documented before in Grand Prairie, Texas.
That is true.
You know, the other thing that occurs to me, Ms. Jackson, is that we have a very active retired teachers group, Grand Prairie Retired Teachers Group, and I suspect that many of them have a great deal of history in their minds, and I think it would be, quite possible to go to that group and ask them to join us in this effort. They meet, I believe they're going to meet in August for their first fall meeting, and enlist them to get involved, because as you've already indicated, we've got bits and pieces of history and
Yes.
probably less so of school district history than the city of Grand Prairie. So I think they could be very useful and helpful in pursuing this more complete picture of our school district's history.
I just really have some visions of wonderful things that can come from this. How about poetry? We have so many gifted students that could, we could have a poetry contest. We can have an art, think of all of the art contests that you could have. And the pictures of the schools and the evolution of a school, how it started out, because you've added classrooms to almost every school in Grand Prairie, Texas, in one way or the other. And if we could come up with a pictorial history of the Grand Prairie ISD. And I still think that, Mr. Sam, I think you are absolutely right. I think you're going to have to go back and just see when the first schools in Grand Prairie can be absolutely documented. And I think that would just be wonderful. What do you think we need to do?
Well, I think you have certainly impressed and enlisted our assistance in that endeavor. And our task, I think, is number one, to get the school board aware of some of the ideas that we've generated. I think talk with our administrative team to get the individual school histories going. I think that's doable, and I think we need to do that as soon as possible. And then work with our curriculum folks to see how we might integrate some research kinds of experiences for our students to begin to retrieve some of that history.
Are we going to be in a position to have a birthday party?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've already talked, the Charitable Trust for the School District has talked about the possibility of a birthday party and looking at that as a dinner that might involve widespread community involvement, bring someone here of some high visibility who can be a drawing card and get everyone involved as much as possible.
Well, I just happened to bring with me today a remuneration that I received from the Grand Prairie ISD for a history presentation that we made through Mrs. Wilkinson's class. And I would like to be one of the first to contribute to whatever fund that's going to be, that's going to help take care of some of the things like that. And I'll pass this on to the right person that's on the show, that's in charge of the Charitable Trust, to be sure that this goes for birthday for the Grand Prairie ISD for their 100th birthday. I think this is just really wonderful.
Very good.
And while we're talking about history, you have really made history just this last year that have been here. We have a few minutes left on this plea to you about the birthday. Why don't we talk a little bit about what's been going on in Grand Prairie ISD, and you're building schools everywhere, and the city of Grand Prairie is having to come up with streets and sidewalks and all of these things. And I got a call yesterday and they said, we're going to need crossing guards for all of these new schools. Are you going to let us come on your television show? So you're motivating people to think ahead already. They said, August is going to be here before you know it. So tell us about some of the new schools that's making history here in Grand Prairie for this year.
Well, Ms. Jackson, as you know, we're experiencing fairly significant growth in our community and in our school district to the extent where the community was very, I think, generous in supporting a large bond project in September of '99. The result of that, as you've already indicated, we have a number of schools under construction. We have 2 schools that we would expect to open in August, and that's Sally Moore Elementary School, who's named, as you well know, after one of our longtime educators. We will also open Irvin Whitt Elementary School, who again is one of the Grand Prairie well-known administrators. And then sometime probably the first part of October, we will open Crockett Elementary School. There was a delay there because that particular site was in the city of Dallas, and so we had considerable amount of red tape to go through. But
Grand Prairie is a lot better to negotiate with, aren't they?
No question about it, Ruthie. No question about it. And that's one of the things that I tell everyone wherever I go, that I think the relationship between the city and the school district is a fantastic relationship. They work very closely with us. They're very cooperative. And you know, they try to give us priority because they know we need to move ahead with projects as quickly as possible. So we will open those 3 schools this fall, and then look to next year, the fall of 2002, when we will open 2 new middle schools, a replacement facility for Jackson Middle School, and a new middle school for Bill Arnold, another longtime Grand Prairie administrator. And then we will open the new 9th grade center at Grand Prairie High School, and the converted, if you will, Jackson Middle School, which will be the 9th grade center for South Grand Prairie High School. So we still have projects underway, and
you're making history every day.
We're hopeful that we'll be ready to go in the fall of 2002 with all of our projects.
We have 2.5 minutes left on this interview, and history went up in flames the other night with the partial destruction, I guess, almost, of Lee Middle School. You want to comment on that before we leave? That was a sad history happening.
It was, and being there that night, I saw a number of longtime Grand Prairie residents. The mayor was there, other city council members, people who had attended that school and have an attachment to that school, who obviously were very emotionally tied to the school. Indeed, it did suffer significant damage. We're still in the process as we speak of determining what the extent of the damage is. We have a structural engineer there who started yesterday and is there today to determine what the damage is to the structure, even though it may look like it's usable. Smoke and fire does significant damage
And it was an older
to brick
school.
and to brick and mortar. So at this point, it appears that the library area and classrooms located south of that area will not be, were totally destroyed and will not be usable. But again, whether, for example, the original structure, the two-story structure, will be usable or not, we've not yet determined that, and that remains to be seen.
Okay. I'd like to thank both of you gentlemen very much, and especially you, Mr. Sam Buckmeyer. You've always been so wonderful when we've asked you to see if you could get the superintendent to agree to come and let's talk about things. You've always been accessible. And Gail, your secretary, is magnificent, because when I can't get through to you, I get through to Gail and I say, find that young man, and she does that. Do you have any comments on this as we wind down?
We're really looking forward to the events of the coming year. We think it's going to be a lot of fun, very educational. We're looking forward to it.
Okay. Anything else you want to say before you close this shop down?
We appreciate another opportunity to be with you, and we'll be working with you and others in the community to make that 100th year a memorable one.
And we're also going to look for Mr. Buck Smith, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We may have our board president who spends time on the golf course, look and see if he
go
can
out and see
find
if he can find him playing
Yes,
out
ma'am.
at the Prairie Lakes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank y'all so much for being here
Our
and
pleasure.
helping us set the
Thank you,
stage.
Ruthie.
And Sam, thank you for letting me have first shot at the Grand Prairie ISD's 100th birthday on July the 5th, 2002. And it's very important to all of us that are historically inclined. I'll say that we are not historians by certification, but by the love of the city of Grand Prairie and the schools. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.